name is Dr. Tracy Karras, and welcome to the SOH, otherwise known as the state of healthcare. The state of healthcare in the United States, let's be honest, is actually one of illness. We spend far more money than any other nation to receive less care and less quality of care. Walter Cronkite calls it neither healthy, caring, or a system. As a healthcare professional who's had 20 plus years in this system, my focus is on prevention and education and trying to get patients back to actually enjoying happy and functional lives. So it's frustrating to me when I have to watch my patients and my friends and my family fight against a system just to get what little care they do, and oftentimes get a medication thrown at them instead of actually looking for what the problem is, or trying to find a healthier alternative that's not going to damage them in the long term. That's why we're here, so I invite you to join me on this journey. We're going to be starting to raise awareness. Awareness is the first step in any good 12-step program, right, to making change. We have a broken system where only a few people profit, and I'm not picking on all of those hard healthcare workers in the trenches, because those are the people, unfortunately, getting burnt out and leaving the system. So we need to figure out what's going on. So in this podcast, we're going to be interviewing some healthcare professionals, people in the industry, people surrounding the industry, and try to figure out what's going on here, what's broken for them, what would make their lives easier, and how we're going to do this. So welcome to the SOH, and let's figure out what's going on. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the State of Healthcare. I am here with Dr. Jason Kaufman, and I'm actually going to let him introduce himself and kind of what you do.
Hi, I'm Jason Kaufman. I'm a chiropractor, but I do things very differently. I've been working in neurology now for 18 years with my brother, of all people. And when you work in a neurology clinic as a chiropractor, you kind of evolve away from traditional chiropractic because you kind of see the fallout of what can happen, unfortunately, with chiropractic. So, but never mind the safety concerns of manipulating vertebral arteries or herniating a disc. It doesn't make any sense to me because the spine is the deepest thing inside your body. There's nothing deeper. And on top of it are hundreds of muscles. Again, you can see the charts back here. There's hundreds of muscles attached to your spine. And on top of that, you have fascia planes, spirals, diagonals, pulling and yanking on the spine. So rather than ignore all that, I actually treat that. That's the focus of my treatment. And I developed my own little method called Kaufman Method. I actually have a website, kaufmanmethod.com. You can go look about what I do. And I'm really excited about it. I'm doing it for over 22 years and excited to share more today. Thank you.
Well, so what makes your method different? So, I mean, most people usually you go in, you get cracked, you move on kind of thing, right? So.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's what chiropractors become, a bit of a mill, get adjusted over and over again. But again, we're not really getting to the cause of the problem. I understand posture and misalignments. I agree with all that. But why? Why do we have that? What's the actual cause of a misalignment? Again, where you have all these muscles and fascia pulling on everything. Why don't we treat that, settle all that down, and then you get into some rehab exercises, strengthening, and relaxation techniques. So you don't need to see me all the time. And most of my patients don't. I see them kind of irregularly. They kind of know when it's time to come in, because once you get them out of their state of dysfunction, they know when it's time to come back because they're starting to feel like they're getting tightened up again. It's like, I gotta go see Jason. So I focus more on soft tissue, but I treat it in a very safe and gentle way. I'm not big on deep tissue work where you can create some trauma and inflammation. I personally don't like it myself. It's more of a very gentle homeopathic approach to acupressure, where we're not digging deep into people. We're meeting resistance halfway with manual therapy, getting the body to respond, feeling that response, and then following it through the body. And I spend a good hour plus doing that every time I see somebody.
Well, that's actually pretty different, because usually on average you see someone for a chiropractic, it's like 10 minutes maybe, you're adjusted, you're out. So how are you, I guess my question is, how are you able to do that? Because that's how I like to treat my patients. I like the full hour one-on-one with them so that I can actually address them specifically, right? So it's all kind of customized to that patient. How are you able to make that work, or how did?
Well, in this world of insurance, they don't value time with doctors. That's why I don't take insurance, because they want me to see somebody every 5 to 10 minutes. And you can't help anybody in 5 to 10 minutes when they have sometimes a lifetime of dysfunction. So I am fee for service at the work that I do, so I could spend an hour or longer with some people. And they value that. It's interesting. Patients value the time and work that I'm putting in to taking care of them, because, when you take insurance, unfortunately, the only thing valued in that model is volume. And that's why you see the mill, not just in chiropractic, but in physical therapy, in medicine. Volume is what is valued, and it's a huge problem today. But it's a labor of love. Like what would I want if I was the patient? I want Jason to work on me for as long as he needs to make me feel better. And I'd be happy to pay for that, which most of my patients, they have no problem with that because they know I care. I'm trying to help them, and you have to run your business. So you have to collect your fee for your service, just like every other business and service industry in the country and the world. You pay for what you get. But in this world, it's this whole conglomerate insurance people. You hand over an insurance card and they'll decide what's valued and what's not. And this big game that everyone starts playing with coding and all these things. So I don't get involved in any of that anymore. I did it initially, but I realized right away, I can't spend time with my patients and maintain a practice if you're taking insurance. So that's probably the biggest, reason why I had to go cash, because I have to spend time to do the work that I do, just like a massage therapist or anyone else. You got to spend some time working on somebody's body in order to help them.
Right. Well, I can't fault that as my own cash pay person now, but I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So I don't take insurance simply for the fact that I actually want to do the care that I think the person needs and address it to them. And I don't want it dictated by someone who's following a flow chart. Saying like, oh, it's low back pain, they should do 6 visits in a home program.
Somehow they know the patient. They don't even know who the patient is, right? I mean, while they're in front of us, we're evaluating them, we're talking to them, we're hearing their history, examining them, all these things. But then, someone on the other side just like trying to say, oh, no, you need this, this, and this. And it's a problem in healthcare, not just in rehab and chiro and PT. But again, I work in neurology now. I've been running my brother's practice for like many, many years. And just seeing how he gets told how he should practice. He's a Harvard-trained, triple-boarded genius. But then somebody in some out-of-state insurance office is saying, no, that MRI he orders is not necessary. Or the medication he orders is not necessary. Take this instead. And then we got to get in these fights with them to get things approved. So it's just, I don't have patience for it. I don't have time for that. And neither does my patients. So I just treat them, and they're happy to come in and when they need to.
Well, and you mentioned, I've seen other things where you actually take the time and do the really good interview, right? Because a lot of times you see a doctor and it's like in the first minute they've decided what medicine they're probably going to give you or they're going to do really fast. So talk to me a little bit about that initial evaluation. And
then that's another piece of working in neurology, because a lot of times the answer comes from the patient. You ask them, what are your symptoms? When did they start? All these different things play a role in trying to figure out what is actually wrong. So many times I get a patient, they sell this one and that one, did all this therapy. And I say, okay, well, what are you doing here? Well, they have the same problem. And I said, well, did you ever get an MRI or an image? No, never had any. So what's your diagnosis, right? So basically the way I go about treating people is you sit with them for a period of time, hear their story, try to get the details of it, examine them thoroughly, and then treat them. And the way I treat is so harmless that I don't need any imaging. But right away, if there's no improvement with the work I'm doing within a visit or two, I'm ordering an MRI because there's something going on internally that we need to figure out, because people respond to the work that I do. And if they don't, there's no harm in what I just did because it's very safe in general what my work is. But we don't just say, let's keep doing this, like you see in a lot of protocols. I say, this isn't working. Let's go get an MRI. And then sometimes we need, pain management, epidural, or maybe we need a surgeon. I work with Dr. Tumiala a lot at Barrows, St. Joseph's Hospital. A lot of times we need neurosurgery because I get patients at their last, I'm like the last stop. They saw all these people, they got acute problems. And I get an MRI right away on some of them. And say, oh my goodness, he needs surgery. Like, no one told him this, So you got to examine them, you got to interview them, but more importantly, you need to know when to say, okay, the treatment's not working. Let's get a scan and let's refer out if we need to.
Okay. Well, and you also mentioned a little bit, because some places we talked about COVID. So COVID, you said, actually kind of exploded your business maybe, or even
Like nothing really changed, but it also maybe grew.
Yeah, COVID is an interesting thing. I practice in Malibu, California, as well as Scottsdale. Obviously, I stopped traveling, so it impacted that. And my patients were very upset about that in California. And it took about 2 years for me to actually get that going again. But here in Scottsdale, I stopped for a little bit, but a lot of my patients, the stress levels are through the roof with that whole situation, which people will internalize that, a flare, an existing problem, and they needed help. So we did our masking, did everything we needed to do, wiped tables like crazy, and made sure we were safe. But patients needed care, and they weren't getting it in a lot of places. And even to this day, the world's changed. Everyone knows the world's changed since then, and the stress levels are through the roof. It didn't impact the practice, really, my practice or the neurology side either, because it really flared patients more than anything else. And a lot of doctors that were pushing retirement, they just said, all right, I'm out. And now most doctors now are flooded with patients because there's so many more people, especially here in Arizona. So a lot of people moved to Arizona, and a lot of doctors have been retiring. And there was a lot of rules and regulations regarding vaccine and all this. And some people just said, I don't have anything to do with it. They just said it wasn't worth being in practice anymore. And even on the nursing side, I know a lot of nurses that ran into some issues with that. So COVID changed it in a couple of different ways. It stopped what I was doing with travel, but it also flared patients so much more that it created more patients, and maybe flare people that had old chronic things that were being managed well. But then with that gap of treating them, things got way worse very quickly. And we're still seeing the fallout of that today.
Right. I know the healthcare shortage and all the things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems going on right now. And that was a big trigger for that.
Well, and you've already gone where you're fee for service, and it sounds like your business is growing really well. If there was one thing you could change in the healthcare system to make your world easier, or a couple, whatever.
I think the main thing is valuing prevention of problems. Like there's that people say it's not healthcare, it's sick care. But at the same time, there is actually some credence to that, because if someone wants to use their insurance to get an MRI, I got to fight to get an MRI. A person's got acute sciatica, but they'd say, well, did they do an X-ray? Like an X-ray is not going to tell me anything. I mean, you don't see a disc on an X-ray, but there's all these algorithms that lawyers and actuaries are creating, and they're not in the trenches. Same with like the EHRs. I don't know if you use the EHR, but we have one here, and it was designed by these computer people in another country, and they're not in the trenches. So the people that are calling the shots are not in the trenches, and that's a huge problem. I was a chiropractor for 5 years before I got out of, I was in Philadelphia. I was practicing in health clubs and in primary care. My brother, who's 2 years older than me, I was in practice 5 years before he got out of training. That's how much training he has. So he came out to Scottsdale, started his own practice, was in over his head right away, which is why I'm here. And I became this manager, administrator, biller, HR guy. I started wearing all these hats so he could have a practice. And we established something great. He's a top guy. Everyone knows him in town. But, I've learned so much how disrespectful and inconsiderate and how they take for granted the doctors that the government and the insurance companies are. What's healthcare without doctors, right? And the doctors, unfortunately, don't seem to realize that. And most of them don't have their own practice anymore. They're employed, and they have no say in what they do. They get a list of 40, 50, 60 people to see a day, and they just got to churn them and burn them. And you're not helping anybody doing that. So unfortunately, it's all tied to the money, obviously.
Right.
And if they would value prevention of ER visits, like if my brother spends an hour with somebody and figures them out, he's going to prevent hospitalizations and surgeries and all, but there's no value to that. The value is getting them in and out of here every 10 minutes, which we don't do. and makes things difficult because he does take insurance. So, maintaining your own practice and taking insurance is almost becoming an impossible situation. So
to even be profitable
yeah,
enough to
so
do it.
yeah, unfortunately, putting value on volume is where we're really going wrong with healthcare. What am I going to do about that? This is it starts all the way up the top with the government, CMS, Medicare guidelines, and then the insurance companies. You see every day, the insurance companies, they're getting into fights with hospitals now because, they don't want to pay. And the hospitals are they're playing this like game of chicken, and poor patients are the ones that are concerned. They've been treating with the same doctor or hospital for years, and now well, we're not taking our insurance anymore, because they're having this contractual problem. So in the end, they need to value the doctors and their educations that they have, hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to med school, and then they want to pay very, very little for the work and their expertise. So unfortunately, it's there's a lot of tentacles to it, but at the end of the day, they need to value who the doctors are and what they're doing, and the time that they're spending with patients. That time is not valued, unfortunately. That's why you're getting your 10-15-minute visits. And that's probably the biggest problem, because you need to figure out somebody. You just met this perfect stranger. You don't know anything about them. And they come in for a reason. There's something wrong. And you got to be all in a rush because you got 4 other patients in other rooms that you got to see. That's very stressful for a doctor. And that's why you're seeing the burnout that we have. And unfortunately, the people that make decisions, most of them are not medical people.
They're usually business people.
They're business people.
Somebody following how much they can get up.
Yeah, how much can we make? You got to keep the shareholders happy. And then the government's always trying to trim. They're always threatening to cut Medicare. The Medicare patients worry, and the doctors are wondering if we can keep our doors open, if we keep seeing Medicare. It's been drama for decades, but we're at a point now with inflation and all these things that it's almost becoming an impossible situation, and something's going to have to give. And I don't know what the future holds, but at the end of the day, there's a reason why a lot of doctors are going cash. A lot of primary care is going cash. I can see specialists going cash as well, because people need to keep their doors open and pay their bills just like anybody else.
There's a small part of me who always hopes that if enough of us basically we're not going to accept this insurance, right? If the insurance companies could find where there's nowhere it's accepted, would they then have to eventually change?
Well, that's what you would hope, but you just kind of wonder if that would happen. But at the end of the day, I think it's the quality doctors that are going to start doing that, and it'll take some time, because patients will say, well, I'll go see somebody else if you don't take my insurance. Okay, see what happens. You're going to get your 10-minute visit. Probably won't get the help that you think you're going to get.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's a small price to pay to get the quality and expertise that you really wanted in the first place. And at the end of the day, a lot of times on the rehab side, what I do, instead of seeing me once every month or so, they'll go to some kind of rehab office and they'll get them in 2-3 times a week and selling this and selling that. And they're spending more money doing that anyway with their copay. Their deductibles are super high now, so at the end of the day, cash is always king, and it isn't everything else. You get discounted services when you pay out of pocket, because you don't have to have a biller and all the rigmarole of getting paid from the insurance company. So at the end of the day, it's better for the patient, whether they realize it or not. Most of them are starting to realize that more and more every day. They see it just anywhere else. You should go get gas. It's cheaper to get it if you pay cash than use a credit card. Why? They get upset about that. Well, because it costs money for the gas station to run the credit card. So things are shifting. People are kind of waking up. They have HSA cards now, where they put money on their HSA and use that to pay for their services. So I'm hopeful that people start realizing that, demanding more. And maybe the insurance companies will say, okay, you know what? We need to actually take care of these doctors a little bit better. Or we're not going to have anyone in our networks. But it'll be a while before that happens, but it's happening. It's definitely happening here and in California where I work. So it'll be interesting to see what the future holds.
Well, my other question is, what advice would you give for patients? I mean, aside from that, obviously looking for the quality, because for my patients, I'd rather have where they actually I'm like, you can go to a place and do your exercises in the corner with a person who's not really as trained, with like a tech, with following a list, who's not watching you do your stuff or not seeing how you respond or not modulating it to you, right? You're welcome to do
Nothing's
that.
tailored. No.
Yeah. Or you can come to me and we can build a program together
Right.
that's actually matches what you're doing, and I can change your thing based on how you're responding. So what advice would you give patients that are out and navigating this world?
Yeah, well, basically it's just kind of what you said. Everyone's an individual and they need an individualized, tailored program. Same with me. When someone comes in, I don't have a cookie cutter routine for them. I ask them, hey, how you doing? What's going on today? And I actually feel what the body's, saying, and I tailor based on what's presented to me. Just like you would in rehab. Okay, what's going on? Like, we'll adjust this routine here, not just stare at this piece of paper. Oh, your neck hurts? Like, give me the neck low back paper. And this is what happens. And I'm sure you hear it all the time. Like, I get these patients that come in, they did PT, they did chiro, they went to the pain doctor, and then they're still got the same problems. And no one took the time to actually do anything, tailored to them. It's just give them the epidural, give them the piece of paper exercises. So their advice would be demand more and try to get things tailored to exactly what is your situation. And when you see that it's not going anywhere, don't just say, okay, I'll just keep doing this, right? That's kind of one of the old adages, right? Doing the same thing over and over again.
The definition of insanity.
Yeah, insanity, right? And this is what happens in a lot of situations in all kinds of offices and other situations in life. If you see things are going the wrong way or you're not getting the results that you're looking for, you got to say, okay, this isn't working. And you got to have the courage to tell your provider, say, look, you know what? This has been great, but I don't think this is working, and I'm going to go going somewhere. I'm going to leave somewhere else, and that's hard for a lot of patients. They get roped into care plans, they buy packages and all this stuff. But you need to understand if things aren't getting better or going the right way, and a lot of times your instincts are telling you that, you got to say, okay, it's time to move on to something else because there's so many other things out there. I pick that up right away. I work on someone within a visit. If we're not getting anywhere, MRI, see what's wrong, and then I will refer out to other providers because you want to help your patient in the end. So you got to use your instincts when you see someone. Is this person really looking out for me or not? And not just say, okay, I did my due diligence. I made that appointment and I went, and just say, okay, that's my responsibility. You got to take a little more initiative in your life and in your health. And then of course, on the back end of things, you got, diet, exercise, sleeping is a huge one now. People aren't sleeping enough. They're taking crazy supplements. Maybe they shouldn't be. A lot of them, my brother's patients, neurology, they get all kinds of neurological symptoms and from the supplements they're taking, or the meds. So, you got to think about what your responsibility is too. You can't just say, I'm going to go to the doctor and just throw all these problems on them and say, okay, fix me. You have to do your part as well. And we're talking about simple things that aren't that complicated, relaxing, drinking water. I live in Arizona, right? The hottest places on earth sometimes, literally. Breaking records this summer.
Oh my gosh.
And the patients, I say, you want some water? I don't like water. They'll say, like, well, you don't like water, right? So drinking enough water is a big one. Getting your sleep's a big one. Watching your diet, not drinking too much, things like that. Like simple things that everyone knows, but unfortunately they forget to practice that. So it's a little bit of advice for demanding more out of your providers, but also being a little responsible for the decisions that you're making as well. You have to be.
So fight for healthcare, but you got to own it too.
You do. Absolutely.
That's why I always tell patients, I'll work really hard for you, but if you don't meet me part way, we aren't going to be successful.
What's the point, right?
Yeah, well,
exactly.
So I'm not going to do this by myself, but well, and then you Kaufman method, again, what was your site again for that?
It's kaufmanmethod.com. My last name, KAUF, like Frank, MAN, method.com. And there's a lot of information on there. There's a box. If you have any questions, you can always just send me a message and I'll respond as quickly as I can. And I'm happy to help anyone that has any questions or can use a hand. That's what I do.
So he's up here in North Scottsdale. Aaron practice with your brothers, Dr. Seth Kaufman.
Yeah, Scottsdale Neurology. And then I travel to Malibu. I do a lot of house calls there, but I also work at an office called Daily Calm. It's in Malibu Country Mart. It's kind of center of town. And I basically split my time in both places at this point. So we'll see what happens going
in the
forward.
future, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in here or California, obviously there's ways to find, but where you would actually get one-on-one care. So
Absolutely, everything I do is tailored to my patients.
Mhm.
I'm all about my patients. I love my patients, and yeah, I'll do everything I can to help, whether it's my work or if it's a referral, whatever it takes. That's what I do, and I love doing it. So happy to help.
It's nice to hear that. It's nice to hear practitioners actually take the quality and are thriving with it, which is perfect. So
Yeah, it's a labor of love. There's no
Mhm.
doubt about it. I love what I do, and I know people appreciate that, which just makes it's not work. You know, one funny thing is, for me, work is dealing with helping the neurology practice with my brother. That's like the stressful stuff because you're dealing with insurance and the whole world of that. And it's interesting. One other thing, when I'm here in Scottsdale, we have this neurology clinic. There's a Seth patient, which is my brother's neurologist, and there's a Jason patient. And you can kind of see almost in their demeanors. And my patients that come in, they're so happy to be here, even when they're in pain. Like they know I'm going to help them, and they're handing their payment over. They're happy because they know what they're going to get. They know how hard I'm going to work. And then you have these patients that are in this like insurance system that are just like, here's my card, and then you ask for their copay, and it could be a little grumpy sometimes, and he's running a little behind. They get all mad. Meanwhile, he's trying to see very sick patients, with strokes and tumors. And God forbid he's running behind 10 minutes. They get all angry. They'll post a bad review about it or something. And it's just so funny how the system is really just crushing the patients psychologically as well.
Right.
And my patients are coming in and it's like, hey, how you doing? It's like we're all family. We're so excited to see each other. I'm sitting here working real hard on them, and I just love everything I do with them. And then once I finish with the patient, I got to go back and pay the bills and deal with the practice side of our medical practice, and that's the work. Yeah, honestly, that's the work. Taking care of my patients is not work at all, and I'm happy to help anyone who has any questions or can use any help, because that's what I love doing.
I'm glad to hear that. That's actually my favorite part, is this the patient part, which is actually why I'm like not sad to not be sending out bills, not fighting with an insurance company, not sitting on the phone for $12.
It takes all the love out of what you do, and it's a shame. It shouldn't be that way. It just shouldn't be that way. And there's only so much we can do, but maybe things will change someday. What are you gonna do?
Right. Well, thank you again
for
taking this time with
Thrilled
me.
to be here. Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
So, and look for more stuff. Check out the Kaufman method, and
thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you again for tuning in to the SOH, or State of Healthcare. This is Tracy Karras from Better Fit Therapy, asking you to tune in each week as a new podcaster. And if you can like, subscribe, share with your friends, find us on social media, but also feel free to comment. Let us know some areas you'd like to explore. What are some concerns you have with healthcare? Let us find some areas that would help relate to you, what's going on with everybody else, and help me raise some awareness so that we can work on some change. Thank you again, and have a good night.